The Battle of Chosin Reservoir, the frozen hell of the Korean War. The footage you are about to see is real, raw, and unedited. It captures one of the most harrowing chapters in modern military history, the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir during the Korean War. This wasn't just a battle, it was a crucible of human endurance, where US Marines and their allies faced unimaginable odds in the unforgiving cold of a North Korean winter. The story of the Chosin Reservoir is one of strategy, sacrifice, and survival against all odds. The strategic stakes, a frozen chessboard. By the winter of 1950, the Korean War had shifted dramatically. After the successful Incheon landings and the liberation of Seoul, UN forces, under General Douglas MacArthur, pursued the North Korean army deep into enemy territory, pushing toward the Yalu River, the border with China. MacArthur believed that victory was within reach, but his bold advance set the stage for disaster. Unbeknownst to the UN command, China had secretly entered the war. Viewing the UN advance as a direct threat, Mao Zedong sent over 300,000 troops from the Chinese People's Volunteer Army, PVA, to intervene. Their objective was clear: to push UN forces back below the 38th parallel and secure North Korea as a buffer state. The Chosin Reservoir, nestled in the rugged mountains of North Korea, became the focal point of this clash. Strategically located, it controlled the road to Hungnam, a vital port city and lifeline for UN forces. The terrain was a nightmare. Steep ridges, narrow valleys, and winding roads that made supply lines vulnerable and retreat nearly impossible. The stage was set for a brutal showdown in one of the coldest winters on record, with temperatures plummeting to 34 degrees. The Marines, outnumbered but undaunted. The 1st Marine Division, commanded by Major General Oliver P. Smith, bore the brunt of the Chinese onslaught. Numbering around 30,000 troops, the UN forces faced a staggering 120,000 Chinese soldiers who had encircled them in a surprise offensive. The odds were dire, but the Marines had a reputation for resilience, discipline, and tactical ingenuity. From the outset, the conditions were brutal. The extreme cold froze weapons, vehicles, and even the fallen soldiers, turning them into ghastly reminders of the cost of war. Frostbite and hypothermia claimed as many casualties as the enemy. The Marines dubbed their retreat from Chosin an advance in a different direction, a phrase that underscored their determination to hold the line and maintain their fighting spirit despite overwhelming odds. The Chinese strategy: overwhelm and encircle. The Chinese strategy relied on stealth, surprise, and sheer numbers. Using the rugged terrain to their advantage, PVA troops moved silently through the mountains at night, encircling UN positions and attacking in waves. Their logistics were astonishing. Chinese soldiers carried weeks' worth of supplies on foot, relying on minimal resources to sustain their advance. They avoided radio communications to maintain secrecy, relying instead on bugles and flares to coordinate attacks. Their primary tactic was encirclement, cutting off UN units from their supply lines and forcing them into isolated, defensive positions. This method was devastatingly effective, as seen in the initial attacks at Udamni and Hagaruri, key positions around the reservoir. The retreat, a gauntlet of fire and ice. On November 27, 1950, the Chinese launched a massive assault under the cover of darkness. At Udamni, Marines awoke to the sound of bugles, followed by waves of Chinese infantry pouring down the slopes. The fighting was brutal, with hand-to-hand combat breaking out in the freezing cold. Despite being outnumbered, the Marines held their ground, relying on concentrated artillery and close air support to repel the attackers. The retreat from the reservoir was a logistical and tactical nightmare. The narrow roads were littered with wrecked vehicles and mines, forcing convoys to crawl forward under constant threat of ambush. Chinese snipers and machine gun nests targeted supply trucks, while mortar fire rained down on the rear guard. Air support became the Marines' lifeline. Marine corsairs, and Air Force P-51 Mustangs strafed Chinese positions, dropping napalm and providing crucial cover. Meanwhile, Fairchild C-119 flying boxcars delivered ammunition, medical supplies, and food via airdrops, often under heavy enemy fire. These supplies were the difference between survival and annihilation. The human toll, Frozen Reservoir. The toll on the Marines was staggering. Frostbite, trench foot, and exhaustion claimed thousands. Many soldiers described the surreal experience of seeing their comrades frozen in grotesque positions, their bodies left behind as the living pressed forward. The psychological strain was immense. The sound of bugles, the relentless cold, and the knowledge that escape was uncertain weighed heavily on every man. The Chinese suffered even greater losses. Their troops, poorly equipped for the harsh winter, endured devastating casualties from exposure and starvation. For every Marine killed or wounded, several Chinese soldiers died, their bodies left scattered across the frozen battlefield. Geopolitical implications. The price of containment. The Battle of Chosin Reservoir marked a turning point in the Korean War. While the Chinese achieved their goal of forcing a UN withdrawal, the resilience of the Marines ensured that the retreat was orderly and that the core of the 1st Marine Division survived to fight another day. This battle reinforced the strategic importance of air support, logistics, and disciplined leadership in modern warfare. Geopolitically, the battle highlighted the complexities of the Cold War. It demonstrated China's determination to protect its borders and assert its influence in Asia, while underscoring the US's commitment to containing communism. The sacrifices at Chosin solidified the resolve of both nations, setting the stage for a prolonged conflict that would shape the geopolitics of the region for decades. Legacy of the Chosin Few. The Marines who fought at Chosin became known as the Chosin Few, a title that reflects their courage and tenacity. Their actions are studied in military academies as a model of tactical withdrawal and leadership under fire. They proved that even in the face of overwhelming odds, discipline, training, and resolve could carry the day. The footage you are about to see captures the raw realities of this campaign. Marines navigating treacherous terrain, enduring relentless attacks, and holding the line against impossible odds. This is more than a story of survival. It is a testament to the human spirit and the sacrifices made in the name of freedom. The Battle of Chosin Reservoir was not just a battle. It was a defining moment in the history of the Korean War and a crucible that tested the limits of endurance and courage.